domestic oil and gas business, and this summit has been wonderful, amazing. We've been listening very, very carefully our previous panels, and I do think we're gonna get the most out of this one. As Carolina mentioned, we're gonna talk a little bit about deep water in Mexico, who, where, and when. Specifically, remembering that we just heard everything about the excitement, exploration and development plans for Trion. But as we know, the Gulf of Mexico is rich in resources, as Mexican territory is. But the Gulf of Mexico, I do believe we have not explored it enough. And that makes our industry, our sector, and especially our theme for this panel, the deep water, particularly interesting. So it's an honor for me personally to be moderating this panel. And without any further discussion, I'm gonna pass to our first question. It's gonna be for Alma America Porres. Thank you, Doctor, for being with us. I'm gonna make this in Spanish. I know that there's a translation, and Doctora, please feel free to answer in any language that you may feel comfortable with. Doctora, ¿cuáles piensa que son los desarrollos más importantes o los últimos acontecimientos dentro de la Comisión Nacional de Hidrocarburos en términos de los planes para estas aguas profundas? Hablaría tal vez de los últimos años, probablemente de 2019 hacia acá, y ¿qué nos puede comentar sobre el proceso de decisión o de toma de decisiones al interior de la comisión? Sabemos que las sesiones son públicas, es una maravilla de transparencia poder escucharlos comentar y conocer de viva voz las resoluciones y los pensamientos, pero si nos puede platicar un poquito de esta perspectiva desde el interior de nuestro regulador, le vamos a agradecer mucho.
Muchas gracias, Carolina, muchas gracias al evento por la invitación. Creo que es muy importante conocer, o sea, todos los avances que tenemos en México, sobre todo en lo que se refiere a la exploración y producción en todos, ahora sí que en todas las áreas que tenemos en México, y en este caso en aguas profundas. Voy a dar muy rápidamente, por los minutos que tenemos, un poquito de antecedentes de lo que tenemos en aguas profundas para que no lo olvidemos. Creo que eso todo el mundo lo sabemos, sobre todo en este foro. De la estimación que tenemos de los recursos prospectivos en México, que es alrededor de 112.9 miles de millones de recursos prospectivos. Más o menos lo que es el 43% es en la parte de recursos convencionales, y la mitad de ese recurso está localizado en la parte de aguas profundas. Esta parte actualmente está repartido en 14 asignaciones que las tiene Petróleos Mexicanos y 27 contratos. No todo está ya repartido. Ahorita vamos a hablar un poquito de cuánto está repartido y cuánto no, pero hay 27 contratos y 14 asignaciones. En los últimos años, digamos, hablando del 2010 para acá, hubo 44 descubrimientos por parte de Petróleos Mexicanos. Simplemente para que lo tengan en la mente, sobre todo estos descubrimientos fueron en la parte del área de Perdido, que es donde básicamente se concentró Petróleos Mexicanos en su exploración. Y en los últimos años, voy a hablar 2019, 2020 y 2021 de lo que llevamos, se han descubierto aproximadamente, han tenido 5 descubrimientos, con un éxito exploratorio los operadores, porque ya Petróleos Mexicanos no ha incursionado en la parte de aguas profundas. y con un 45% de éxito exploratorio, es decir, de 11 pozos que han perforado los operadores, no incluyendo a Petróleos Mexicanos, se han descubierto, han tenido 5 éxitos en estas áreas. Y desde luego hay que destacar que esto ha sido no nada más en el área de Perdidos, sino básicamente en el área de las cuencas salinas al sur del Golfo de México. Creo que es bien importante decir esto porque además de estos descubrimientos de los 11 pozos exploratorios que han realizado, pues lo que es la comisión ha estado trabajando, sobre todo voy a hablar del 20 y del 21, para que se den idea de todo el trabajo que hemos tenido en aguas profundas. Ha habido 19 planes de exploración, sean nuevos o modificados, de los cuales y de los descubrimientos han pasado 3 a programas de evaluación. Es decir, la rapidez con la que se está moviendo en estas áreas que se descubre y que están pasando a ser evaluados los yacimientos que se están descubriendo. Además de la parte de Trión, que como ya vimos hace un ratito que se está moviendo con mucha velocidad, tenemos otros 2 planes, que es uno para el caso de Morphy, que es el yacimiento con el descubrimiento de Cholula, y el caso de Repsol, con 2 yacimientos, con 2 campos que descubrieron, 2 yacimientos, que es Chingwol y Polok, que creo que es bien importante lo que se está haciendo. ¿Qué destacaría yo? Los tiempos que se están moviendo. O sea, los tiempos que se está moviendo la industria en aguas profundas, que la verdad yo considero que son tiempos récord, además del éxito que se está teniendo, éxito exploratorio en estas áreas en aguas profundas, los tiempos que se está moviendo en tiempo, o sea, en menos de un año están pasando cuando menos ya 3 operadores a programas de evaluación. Yo ahí le dejaría un poco en la primera respuesta para que podamos seguir a las siguientes preguntas. Muchas gracias, Carmen. Muchas gracias, Vale.
Gracias, doctora. Thank you very much for your richful answer. And I would love to hear from Carlos, his thoughts regarding what you just explained us, doctora. So, Carlos, if you can please go on, English or Spanish, whatever it's preferable for you.
Gracias, Valeria. Para continuar con la cadencia del panel, voy a responder esta pregunta en español, si así me lo permiten. Muy buenas tardes a todos. Agradezco a Mexico Business Publishing y a Carolina Morales por la cordial invitación a este prestigiado evento. Un privilegio para mí compartir panel con tan distinguidas personalidades de la industria mexicana del gas y petróleo. Importante señalar que las opiniones que daré en este foro son a título personal y no necesariamente reflejan la postura de Transocean o de la IEDC. En noviembre de 2018, Transocean y BHP, como lo señaló Estefan hace unos minutos, hicimos historia al traer por primera vez en la historia de nuestro país un barco perforador a aguas mexicanas. Se trató del Deepwater Invictus, un barco de 7ª generación que se cuenta entre los 10 más capaces del mundo. El Deepwater Invictus perforó el primer pozo de aguas ultraprofundas a cargo de una compañía internacional de petróleo, el Pozo Trión 2 delimitador. Poco después, en el verano del 2019, el Deepwater Invictus regresó a aguas mexicanas para perforar el Pozo Trión 3. Entre tanto, en febrero del 2019, un barco gemelo, el Deepwater Asgard, perforó el descubrimiento Cholula para Morphy. Más recientemente, en el 2020, Transocean trajo a aguas mexicanas el Deepwater Thalassa para perforar los pozos Chivo y Max para Shell. Si miramos un horizonte de 36 meses en México, han operado 7 taladros de aguas ultraprofundas entre plataformas semisumergibles y barcos perforadores. Hay un octavo, en este caso un barco, que está por llegar. En aguas medianas la historia se empezó a escribir un poco antes, cuando en 2017 Talos trajo a México la primera plataforma semisumergible traída por una compañía internacional de petróleo. En la época reciente han operado 5 plataformas semisumergibles de aguas medianas en México. Si comparamos la actividad costa afuera en otros países de Latinoamérica, excluyendo Brasil, observamos que México ha operado un número de taladros que es el mayor de la región. Por la mañana ya vimos un interesante comparativo regional que presentó Merlin Corchen de la AMEXI en cuanto a pozos exploratorios que coloca a México como líder de la región. El segundo lugar en actividad en aguas profundas lo ocupa Guyana, con 6 barcos perforadores y una plataforma semisumergible que está por iniciar operaciones de exploración. Una diferencia importante es que en México, en aguas profundas, como lo señalaba la doctora, estamos en etapa exploratoria. De tal manera que soy muy optimista en pensar en todo lo que falta por hacer conforme los operadores en México progresen a la etapa de desarrollo de campos.
De acuerdo, Carlos, extraordinarios los comentarios. Thank you very much. It's very interesting to understand what companies like Transocean have been bringing into Mexican deep waters. And well, we're gonna go to our second question there. I would love Chris to answer us or let us know what you think about what do you think are the criteria aspects that operators apply in order to decide or choose which assets to explore and develop?
Thank you very much, Valeria. First of all, it's a pleasure to be with you today in this panel. To answer your question, well, first of all, operators, I guess, choose assets that fit within their portfolio strategy, right? And this portfolio responds then to the type of company, right? In our case, I can explain that Petronas is the national oil company of Malaysia, 100% state-owned. And we, of course, active in Malaysia as an operator and also as a regulatory agency, right? That makes us quite unique. And it's also important to mention that in Malaysia, we work together as a partner with all the present operators, right? But also, we are very, very active globally, and we have an upstream presence in more than 20 countries worldwide. So Mexico is very important for us in our international portfolio. We believe that, especially in the deep water, we still hold quite a significant hydrocarbon potential. We have acquired in Mexico a position of 10 contracts, 9 of which are in the deep waters and 1 is in the shallow water, right? And with this portfolio, we are one of the largest acreage holders with more than 22,000 square kilometers of exploration acreage area. And from the 10 contracts, we operate 5 and are partners of the other 5, right? So Mexico is a key country for Petronas, and this is why we have selected that position. And in our international portfolio, it is actually the country which has the largest interest and the biggest exploration portfolio, right? We are, I think, the only company with assets in the 3 main deep water basins, in Perdido, in Mexican Ridges, and also in the Salina Basin. And this position provides us with a very diversified and balanced portfolio, as well as a very good perspective on the overall prospectivity in the offshore of Mexico. And finally, I would like to mention, and I think it's very important also, that these deep water basins are still very much of frontier nature. And this frontier nature also reflects then the timelines required to have success and to develop, right? So bringing the assets from exploration into production. So in Petronas, we are also working, of course, on concepts and technologies that allows also to accelerate to the production state once these discoveries have been made.
Right, Chris, thanks a lot. Very, very, very interesting. Thanks for sharing. And I would love also to hear from Luis Feijó. What do you think from ABS and your personal perspective?
Oh yeah, thank you very much for being part of this panel here. Well, deciding what type of assets to apply in the exploration and development of offshore field is not an easy task, as we know, right? There's it is a large investment and a big commitment by the operator. So there's a lot of things to look at. So from the production facility standpoint, which is my area, the concepts to be used on the development depends on a series of factors. For example, the production capacity will define the size of the units, the methods that are chosen to export the oil and gas, also define if the operator needs to store oil offshore or export through a pipeline to shore. Environmental characteristics of the field, such as water depth, hurricanes, etc. This also plays an important role in defining the type of concept that is used. The longevity of the asset. It will define if you need to go with a new build or if a conversion of an existing facility or an existing tanker, for example, is the right option. So we here at ABS, we have seen many different types of assets along of our more than 50 years of involvement in the offshore industry. We can say that the most important of those factors to be considered is safety, right? You want to have an asset that meets the safety standards. And this is not only for the people on board, but also for the environment, safety of the environment. So when you put this all together, the operator needs to go through a very thorough evaluation of all those factors. And the class society like ABS, we can assist the operators with that because it's on the technical side of things, right? It's very important. There are, like I mentioned, there are several factors to be considered. Under a technology standpoint,
I'm not sure if I can still to Luis, right? Yes. I think we lost him.
Contributes towards the safety and efficiency of the asset. So, obviously there is a...
Sorry, Luis, we missed the last part of your answer because something happened with the connection.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Don't worry. It was very interesting.
Yeah, well, I was talking about the technology side of things, right? Because the technology, under this technology perspective, there are a lot of new technology that can assist with the asset integrity management side of things, like, and the remote monitoring that increases the safety aspects, increase the efficiency of the assets, and obviously it contributes to the production. So we know that there's always the economic factor, which is also very important. So the cost-benefit balance is very important to the operator and the industry in general. But if we believe that this should not affect the safety of the operations, ABS looks after the safety aspects of the assets and the operations, and we believe that when you have people involved, when you have human beings involved, safety is fundamental. So, thank you.
Thank you, Luis. I think it is undeniable the close relationship in our industry between risk and, of course, safety, people and assets and natural resources with the technologies and thus the investments that need to be done for achieving the best technology available. So I would love to hear from Bob his thoughts about what exploration technologies and methods do you think can define the acceleration and success of deep water campaigns in Mexico? And how do you think operators should justify the investments that these technologies costs or represent? But thank you. You are on mute.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of this panel. Actually, ADS has been involved in Deepwater Mexico for the last 12 years, and we've been involved with PEMEX on every single Perdido Trend discovery. So we've watched the maturation of deepwater Mexico, particularly in the Perdido trend, also in the southern gas sector. So we've had a sort of a, I guess you would say, a ringside seat to development of deepwater in Mexico. It's pretty exciting, really exciting, actually. Mexico has world-class deepwater reserves, and it is the most underexplored deepwater region that I can think of in the world today, particularly ones that have already found hydrocarbon. With regard to technologies that can improve and enhance the development of more exploration in the deepwater Gulf of Mexico, most of those revolve around seismic techniques and seismic technology. I'm not a geophysicist and I'm not that much involved in seismic, but our company is. And we think that some of the most promising techniques that are coming along now are better imaging of the complex structures, and particularly better imaging of subsalt. And one of the exciting techniques that are being used now is called FWI, full wave inversion. And we think that's going to be very beneficial in helping to better image complex reservoirs, complex structures, and also below the salt. And in addition to those technologies, we're seeing great advancements in the ability to evaluate discoveries when we make them with wireline tools and with downhole tools that mean we no longer have to rely on drill stem tests and other methods of developing reserves. We could better map the structure, and with the petrophysical data we could get with wireline tools, we can do a much better job of defining the reservoir, and then once we define that and can then determine very quickly whether this is a commercial find or not. So we think that that for exploration purposes, particularly, the most helpful new technologies will be coming in seismic. And there's one other area where seismic helps us that we often don't think about. And drilling exploratory wells is very expensive and can be somewhat difficult. And the thing you have to have a good handle on, as well as the drilling window. What is the difference between reservoir pressures that you expect to encounter and the fracture gradient of the reservoir? That's what develops your well plan. And we're getting better and better at geomechanics to help us better define these drilling windows. That makes drilling safer, cheaper, and less problematic. And this is really important in deepwater Gulf of Mexico, because most of the geomechanic methods of developing pressure curves and frac gradient curves depend on compaction of clean shales. And the shales offshore Mexico in the deeper water are not what we would call clean shales. They're interspersed with a lot of sand, which makes that interpretation more difficult. So the better, through better seismic acquisition, better seismic processing, and better seismic interpretation, we could do a better job of drilling the wells. Also, we're getting better and better at seismic at identifying what we think are hydrocarbon indicators in the seismic data. So if I want to put it all in one word, I'm just saying seismic. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Of course, I agree in everything that you just said. I do think seismic is the tool that is going to get us where we want to be in terms of exploration and eventually development in deep waters. But I would love to hear from Chris as an operator of this size and in Mexican waters, what do you think about these technologies and methods defining the acceleration or success on the deep waters campaigns, Chris?
Well, from an operator perspective, of course, there's one element that really mainly accelerates the exploration in Mexico, and that is the availability of data, right? So firstly, CNH has provided very comprehensive data sets in the first place for oil and gas companies, right? But secondly, also there's an enormous amount of new data available, especially seismic data, for example, the 3D wide azimuth data from geophysical companies that have been acquired, which is very, very suitable, of course, as explained before by Bart, for subsalt prospecting, especially for us in the Salina Basin, also in Perdido, right? So clearly the availability of data allows us to move faster on the exploration activities, yeah? In Petronas, we also have, I would say, the necessary in-house capabilities for geoscience technologies, which is including, of course, very important seismic reprocessing and imaging capabilities, yeah? And based on the potential identified from data and technologies, Petronas has actually spent so far around $500 million on exploration itself, right? We have drilled 8 exploration wells together with our partners, 2 of which as an operator, right? And we are, for our next well, currently in the last planning stage, right? We are drilling very soon, and we're waiting for our final permits to be able to start the well. So thanks to this exploration activity in which we have participated as a partner, we have made 3 discoveries so far in the deep water, which have been mentioned already, in Cholula, in Pologan, and Chinwol. And also in the following years, we are planning for continued investment. And this, of course, includes exploration activities with further wells to come.
Thank you, Chris. Super interesting. Carlos, what do you think about the technology aspects?
As drilling contractors, we come one step after in the process. We have talked about seismic, and we have talked about technologies available for exploration. Transocean is working on several technology innovations, some of which are poised to be radical game changers. For sake of timing, I will only mention 5. As you will see, these innovation initiatives aim to increase personal safety, process safety, and aim to protect the environment. The first one is ASHEAR, which is comprised by 2 systems. KBOS is a high-power pyromechanical device capable of shearing practically anything that crosses the blowout preventer, or BOP, in a matter of milliseconds. This technology reduces the risk of having non-shearable tubulars from an average of 300 hours to less than 1 hour throughout a well. This joins with the second subsystem, which is Z safety. This is the second component, an energy storage solution, which is based on battery-driven hydraulic pumps that provide operating fluid to the blind shark rams, which eliminates the need for stack-mounted accumulator bottles. For those of you that have seen a BOP, ultra-deep water BOP, is a 3-story steel facility with a number of bottles. These bottles are eliminated by the use of this system, and instead of shearing in several seconds, this shears in milliseconds. It's used the same igniters that were used in the NASA Space Shuttle program. The second innovation is enhanced kick detection. As Chris and Bob were saying before, you know, the gradient between pore pressure and formation is key. This solution enables dynamic and continuous flow monitoring during all well stages, which shows with a high degree of accuracy the well stability condition. The system reacts and sends very quickly alerts of any kick or mud loss events that otherwise would cause the false indications. It eliminates all false indications and removes the need for human interpretation. So this is another game changer innovation. The third one is robotic riser bolting. Riser running and riser retrieval are the highest labor intensive activities on board, with up to 16 personnel involved. multiple personnel working in the red zone, operating heavy pressure, heavy and high pressure tools, and the spider throughout several days. Transocean's robotic riser bolting automates the bolting process, removing personnel from the red zone during riser operations. Also, a robotic consistency reduces the riser run times by 10% per joint. So it's not only aimed to safety, but also to an enhancement of efficiencies, and the translation on that on cost. Energy awareness dashboard is the next one. This is Transocean's real-time equipment monitoring and health prognosis tool. The Smart Equipment Analytics, or SEA as the acronym, this system allows for better visualization and management of the power plant. For those of us that have not had a chance to visit a 7th generation drillship, the power generation installed would feed a small city. This new approach of power management enables to operating engines at the optimal efficiency level, which is an interesting approach. The old paradigm was to operate multiple engines with low loads and far away from the optimal point of operation. This new approach allows us to operate less engines, with consequent savings on pollutants and emissions of greenhouse gases, and closer to the top efficiency point. And the last one that I would like to mention is HaloGuard. This system provides drill floor access control and automatic personnel recognition to moving equipment. This system combines a wearable alarm and a real-time location transmitter together with a machine vision system that tracks the position of personnel on the drill floor and equipment while operating. Pretty much what that means is that any personnel that is not authorized to go into the red zone and there is machinery operating, it will sound an alarm, it will send multiple signals to the control room, and the machine will eventually stop to prevent anyone to cause injury. Each one, the question relates as well on the payment and the rate of return on investment on these innovations. This is quite interesting. These innovations provide strong rates of return and efficiency gains. I would add that the key for all these investments to be justified, economically justified, is long-term contract commitments. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Very impressive, all the technologies that you've been just describing. And I think that we may all agree that for the deep waters in Mexico to keep developing and keep the exploration going, we must go for a joint effort. Not only the government or the regulators, but also the operators, the specialized contractors and subcontractors. I do think that for this sector to thrive, we have to work all together. Having said this, I would love to hear from Doctora Alma America. What do you think that what changes or challenges do we have in Mexico? What do you think should change in Mexico to benefit the future of the deep water exploration and eventual developments?
Muchas gracias, Vale. Bueno, primero hay que comenzar diciendo algo que quizá pues no nos sorprende a muchos. La producción nacional actual en México es de 1.683.000 millones de petróleo al día, y un poco de condensado más lo de que es gas natural. Sin embargo, 0% de esta producción viene de aguas profundas. El asunto es de que todo viene de, o sea, de aguas someras o de tierra. El segundo punto destacable es de que esta producción ha venido en declinación. O sea, viene en declinación desde hace algunos años y por más que ha habido nuevos descubrimientos en estas áreas, pues no alcanzamos a cambiar esa declinación de producción en México. Entonces, vuelvo otra vez con mi cifra de lo que se tiene de recurso prospectivo en México. En México se tiene evaluado un recurso prospectivo de aproximadamente 23.9 miles de millones de petróleo crudo equivalente. En diferentes áreas, desde lo que es el norte del Golfo de México hasta lo que es las cuencas salinas en el sur del Golfo de México. Ahora sí, respondiendo puntualmente la pregunta, ¿qué consideraría yo que se tiene que cambiar? Definitivamente es, el primero es de que todas las áreas que yo comenté en un principio, que se tienen tanto en asignaciones como en la parte de los contratos, pues que pudieran seguir en esta cadena de valor de lo que es las fases de exploración y producción. Es decir, pues que se exploren correctamente, que ojalá hubiera muchos descubrimientos, que se evalúen correctamente por las inversiones que, como han dicho mis colegas, en cuestión de una evaluación óptima para las inversiones que se tienen que realizar y que pueden llegar a ser una evaluación de las áreas comercialmente viable con los precios actuales de los hidrocarburos y que pueda llegar a un posible desarrollo, es decir, a una incorporación de reservas, que se pueda lograr una producción y que eso nos dé como un país una seguridad energética que estamos deseando. Eso es un punto que es lo más lógico y como les digo, pues no estamos cubriendo todo el potencial que tenemos en el Golfo de México, tanto con las asignaciones como los contratos. Yo pienso y estoy segura y no puedo cambiar mi opinión que se tienen que considerar nuevas áreas para la exploración y producción en México. En este tipo de áreas, pues desde luego tiene que ser de acuerdo a la política energética que defina la Secretaría de Energía, pero esto es necesario por todo el potencial que existe y se tendrá que ver la manera que defina la Secretaría de Energía, si es por medio de farm out, si es por medio de nuevas licitaciones, si es, o sea, los medios que defina la Secretaría de Energía, pero yo creo que ese es el principal cambio que debe de haber para que se pueda, mientras todavía tengamos tiempo en México, de poder incursionar en el recurso prospectivo que tiene el país y poder lograr en los tiempos que se están teniendo, cuando menos en esta fase de exploración, o sea, alcanzar los recursos que se puedan obtener de estas áreas tan prometedoras que tenemos en México. Esa sería mi respuesta, Valeria.
Gracias, doctora. Definitely, we know that the clock is ticking, time is running, and we do have several legal instruments, tools, and ways to collaborate, participate, and of course that the Mexican Ministry of Energy may take hand of in order to help develop the development of these wonderful resources that we have. But I would love to hear about what do you think the changes in Mexico should be done?
Okay, very interesting comments from the previous speaker. The reason why Mexico is one of the most underexplored oil provinces in the world is because since what, the 30s, 40s, there's only been one company that's actually been exploring and producing oil in that region. And what Mexico desperately needs, I think, to increase the development of their natural resources is they must have international sources of money and people and equipment to speed up the exploration and bringing on to production the hydrocarbon resource that they have. And this was going along, beginning to go along very well. And then we recently had some changes in government that I think put some dampers on that. So really what Mexico needs, and I love Mexico. I've been working down there now for about 12 years. I love the people. I love working with them. And I really would like to see Mexico just flourish in the exploration and development of their hydrocarbons. And to do that, they just need to make sure that everything they do is friendly to foreign investment and the bringing in of equipment and money and expertise to develop all of their resources, not just the deep water. They've got excellent resources in the shallow water. Those wells are some of the hardest to drill. We've worked on some of those. The deep water Gulf of Mexico, those wells are somewhat easier than deep water wells in some other areas of the world. They've got a lot of oil onshore in Mexico that needs to be exploited. And so it just needs to be a very friendly, welcoming regime to help Mexico become energy independent. That's going to be better for its people. It's what Mexico needs. And I hope that happens. I really do. I love Mexico.
Thank you, Bob. We love Mexico as well, and we also hope that we will get there eventually. Luis, what would your thoughts would be about the changes that need to be in Mexico?
Well, the deep water industry in Mexico is starting to move fast at full speed, right? And especially, you know, if what Dr.
I think Luis is having trouble with his connection. Probably coming back.
Country. So,
Luis, we couldn't hear you because something's going on with the connection.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
We still have a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I was saying that, you know, what Dr. Alma America mentioned about, you know, the new areas and the new bid rounds that if it happens, the industry will need to evolve quickly to fill that gap and to serve the international clients. So we believe, I believe that future projects will look for more construction in the country. So that will put more pressure in the industry. Is a good pressure. That will bring more work, will require the involvement and the improvement of the workforce and the development of the workforce skill set, as you know, the expertise that Bud just mentioned. And as this plans start to mature, we believe that the service industry will also expand. So the local companies will need to prepare for that. From our side, ABS is really working on developing this workforce. We have developed the competencies of our staff, the capabilities, and getting ready for this demand. We also work quite a bit with the regulatory side of things. And as you mentioned, you also mentioned, Valeria, the regulatory side. We believe that the regulations are there, right? So the regulations are in place, and but the offshore industry is broad, and there are so many aspects to be considered, and the technology evolves quickly. So the technical regulatory requirements are being better defined as the projects go along, as the time goes by. And the processes and the procedures are also being developed to accommodate the offshore project needs. So overall, we think that Mexico is in a good path for a great future, and ABS is here to support this evolution with our services in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Yes, I mentioned the regulatory perspective. I have this defect that I am a lawyer. So from my perspective, always you have to look into regulations and regulatory agencies first. But of course, I mean, every oil country have a very unique way to defend and regulate their own natural resources, as Mexico has. So it is pretty normal for all the members of the industry to deal with heavily regulated sector and activity regarding, of course, the risks and all the other things that we've already talked about in this panel. So, Carlos, what would your contributions would be in this regard?
I would like to add that echoing a little bit what has been mentioned, Mexico requires more rounds and more farm outs. I believe there's no question about it. Secondly, Mexico, along those lines, must realize as a jurisdictions that countries and fiscal regimes around the world need to compete for investments. Operators with international portfolios evaluate the risks and potential rewards of each prospect. I believe that there's still work to do to perfect the regulations and avoid duplicity of jurisdictions between regulatory bodies. And lastly, from the perspective of the drilling contractors, I believe it's essential to reach long-term contractual commitments that typically occur at field development stage. Long-term contracts are essential to reach economies of scope, economies of scale, and local content, which is so important for the country and for Mexico. Thank you.
Absolutely, and super important, Carlos, what local content may help for the national industry to keep also growing. And Chris, what would you tell us about the changes that need to be done in Mexico?
Well, Valeria, from Petronas' perspective, I think the efficiency of the regulatory framework, right, and the communication between different agencies are things that could be improved. Well, we all know it's normal and it takes time for processes to establish and improve, such as the regulation. So therefore, we are actually very confident that Mexico will improve in its regulatory framework, also for the benefit, of course, of the whole country, right? And Petronas actually knows that topic quite well. As I mentioned in the beginning, we are the regulator of the industry in Malaysia. And of course, it's not an easy task, right? So that has to be appreciated as well. Of course, we are open also for collaboration and discussions through the official channels, and we are happy also to help improving the process.
Thanks a lot, Chris. And of course, as we already mentioned, clock is ticking and we are almost getting to the last part of our panel. So I would love, again, Chris, if you could help us out with your final remarks, comments. I would love to hear from you if you can take 1 minute per participant so that we may all have the opportunity to speak. Thanks, Chris.
Certainly. Very briefly, well, I think Mexico has seen a lot of success, right, in its onshore and shallow waters, as mentioned before, with decades of production and being one of the main oil producers in the world, right? And we in Petronas, we believe actually that the deep water basins in Mexico represent areas with significant hydrocarbon potential yet to be discovered, which will be ultimately contributing to continue this success. So therefore, we will continue to invest, as I mentioned before, in exploration activities, also to help delineating this full potential in Mexico, especially in the deep water part.
Definitely, Chris. Thanks a lot. Carlos.
The history of the Mexican oil and gas industry is still quite young. The current environment is quite complex, as we have heard throughout the day. And in a positive tone, I remain optimistic about the amazing potential and the great amount of work that is left to do. As a final remark, I would like to take a commercial ad. The International Association of Drilling Contractors, the IADC, launched back in August of 2020 its youngest chapter, the Latin America chapter, which geographically covers Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean islands, and continental South America, with the exception of Brazil. The chapter's vision is that we aspire to be the reliable voice of the Latin American member companies and to be the trusted advisor of the upstream oil and gas industry in Latin America. So on behalf of the Latin America chapter, I would like to extend an almost cordial invitation to join us. Please visit the IDC website and look for the Latin America chapter microsite. And thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Carlos. Bob, please help us out with your final remarks.
Well, I really don't have much to add to any of that. I thought it were really great comments from everyone. The only thing I want to say, Valeria, is you've done a great job moderating this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Luis.
Yeah, well, thank you for my colleagues here and for this great panel, very thoughtful insight. Thank you for you, Valeria, for moderating this.
My pleasure.
The Mexican journey in deep water is just starting. We at ABS, we are honored to be part of this journey. We've been in the country for several decades now, and we've been involved in the first offshore development in the country with the first FSO installed in the 90s. So we are doing our part also to support the development and the assisting local industry. We use our local labor, and we are looking forward to continue activities in the country, assisting clients in Mexico, dealing with regulatory agencies, and helping developing the local oil and gas industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis, and thank you. It has been my pleasure being here. Dr. Alma America, please give us your final thoughts.
Sí, muchísimas gracias, Valeria. Yo sí recordar tres cosas importantes, y yo quisiera volver a insistir del recurso potencial que existe en México. En el área de perdido se tiene asignado en asignaciones y contratos, queda por asignar el 23%. O sea, todavía no está asignado, eso es algo importante. En el área de cordilleras mexicanas, falta por asignar el 63%. Y en el área de cuencas salinas, donde pensamos que puede haber todavía muchísimo potencial, queda por asignar el 63%. Es algo bien importante. El segundo punto que me gustaría destacar es los tiempos que se han tenido de que se iniciaron las licitaciones en cualquiera con los nuevos operadores, al tiempo de que se empezaron a tener los primeros descubrimientos. Para mí ha sido tiempo récord, son 10 meses, pero esto no ha sido gratis. Creo que es algo que comentó Bot y tiene que ver con que se hizo una campaña de adquisición de datos, sobre todo geofísicos, en el Golfo de México, que hace unos 2-3 años fue el área más explorada a nivel mundial por medio de compañías básicamente sísmicas, y que eso permitió que se pudiera lograr estos primeros, digamos, primeras exploraciones con tan rápido, con tiempos tan récord. Y desde luego que hay que seguir tomando mayor información por las evoluciones tecnológicas que también comentaron, pero creo que esto fue digamos, el punto clave para poder tener los tiempos en los cuales estamos teniendo el conocimiento del subsuelo en las áreas del Golfo de México profundo. Eso sería todo y muchísimas gracias.
Al contrario, doctora, gracias a usted. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. We still have a couple of minutes left because we've been receiving a lot of different questions via the platform. And thus, we were trying to reserve some minutes to answer this. So I'm going to ask this. I would love to hear from Dr. Alma America. I don't know, want to force you or anything, but you want to answer this, it would be great. And probably Carlos may help us out also with this, or Chris. Here it goes. Someone is asking, what do you expect to be the role that Pemex will play in Mexico's deep waters activities, considering their current policy of divestment in this category?
Yo, mire, o sea, creo que existe una política energética actual en el cual se ha definido que Petróleos Mexicanos no va a intervenir en aguas profundas. Sin embargo, yo creo que Pemex tiene tanta experiencia en los yacimientos de México que para mí, sobre todo en la parte exploratoria, sería un desperdicio, esa es mi opinión personal, voy a decirlo, sería un desperdicio que México, o sea, que Pemex no participara en esa fase, sobre todo como colaborador, desde luego, de consorcios en donde pudiera, o sea, o en farm outs, o sea, sobre todo con todas las asignaciones que tiene asignadas, y que pudiera colaborar con todo el conocimiento del subsuelo que tiene de México y con todo, digamos, el historial que tiene. Desde luego, para la parte de producción y desarrollo de todos esos campos, como bien también lo comentaron, creo que se requiere de grandes recursos que tendría que estar compartidos con otros operadores, como se hace a nivel mundial. Entonces, desde luego, esto tiene que venir avalado por la política energética nacional, pero en la fase exploratoria yo no veo el por qué no podría participar Petróleos Mexicanos. Y desde luego, pues esa es una opinión muy, muy personal.
Gracias, doctora. I don't know, Carlos or Chris, would you like to add anything? What do you think about Pemex position?
Yes, thank you, Valeria. I would add that, also as a personal thought and a wish that we have a very good example in Latin America with what Ecopetrol is doing, which they partner, not necessarily as operator, but as an equity participant with pretty much every development in the country. They also have a very successful subsidiary in the US where they have equity participation in several blocks in the US Gulf of Mexico. So echoing what Doctora Alma America was saying before, I think that there's a wealth of experience that Pemex can contribute. If we all know that there's financial challenges going on right now, so farm outs and equity participation, I believe that would be a great opportunity to have those exchanges and provoke these win-win relationships where the IOCs can benefit of the wealth of experience of the local experience of Pemex, and vice versa. The international best practice can be brought very effectively to Mexico. And I believe that there are good examples of that in the secondments that we have been having, as Stefan was referring moments ago. That would be my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. What do you think, Chris? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think as it was mentioned just before by both Dr. Alma America and Carlos, I believe undoubtedly Pemex has the capability and also the knowledge, right, to be successful if they have the ambition to do so, right? And I think we all would certainly benefit from further exploration successes so in the deep water of Mexico. So certainly, I believe if that is their ambition, I believe they have certainly all ability to be successful there.
Thank you, Chris. Bob and Luis, do you want to comment on that? Good thought.
Only to agree with what Carlos and Chris has said. Pemex has a wealth of subsurface data, information, expertise. I mean, they've been working these basins for years, and they've drilled a lot of wells. So they've got a lot of experience, but they've got an enormous amount of subsurface data that would be valuable to anyone who wants to explore or operate in Mexico.
You're right, Bob. Thank you. Luis.
And for me, as a personal opinion, I agree with all the panelists, and we can use, Carlos used the example of Ecopetrol. We can use the example of Petrobras in Brazil as well. So yeah, the local companies, they have been doing that for so long.
Right. Thank you, Luis. I think we all agree. We all want a very strong national oil company, as well as the fair and development of the sector, with also the international oil companies coming, not only the international, but also the development of the national sector. Well, this is the end of our panel. It's been my pleasure. It's been a real honor to share this screen with you. Hopefully next year we'll be having this face-to-face. In the meantime, please take care of yourself. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mexico Oil and Gas. Thank you, Carolina.